Hello again, Father Larry for part 2 of my Appalachian Trail story or experience here from my 1990 through hike, and a couple little anecdotes I wanted to share. One was I walked up on a wedding one time. I thought that was a odd kind of experience. I think I was in Virginia somewhere. I just remember walking up a really steep mountain, and I had to really dig deep. I was sweating like crazy, and got to the top of this thing, quads burning, and just hear what sounds like wedding music. It's kind of bizarre. Faint at first, and then it grew louder. And next thing you know, I walk right up into a wedding on this overlook. And it was one of the most bizarre experiences. So they took pictures of me to put in the photo album, the wedding photo album. They wanted pictures of the hiker who walked up on the wedding. So anyway, just little memories like that. I remember this one time I was at some park, and there was a lake, and I was playing hacky sack with some local kids. I don't know. It was just a state park or something in New Jersey. Can't remember where I was. Maybe it was in Pennsylvania. And I remember the AT went by this this lake where there was like a beach, and people were picnicking and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, this looks like a cool place to hang out. I went down there, hung out for a little bit, saw some kids playing hacky sack. I went over and joined these teenagers because I love kicking a hacky sack. And we were doing that. And so here I am doing this when all of a sudden a cop car pulls up. This cop gets out and starts walking towards us. And I'm getting a little nervous. I don't know. I haven't broken any laws. I don't know why this cop is approaching us. I immediately think he's after me for some reason. What is this all about? Walks up to me and he says, sir, can I speak to you for a minute? So I walk off to the side with this officer, and he says, look, I got an 80-year-old farmer up the way who needs help getting hay into his barn. I wonder if you'd be willing to help him. I'm like, yeah, sure. I grab my stuff, throw it in the back of his cruiser, and next thing you know, I'm barreling across these country roads with this cop. I'll tell you, man, amazing. Trail magic, we call it. It's what thru hikers would call this kind of thing that would happen routinely. Trail magic, you know. People would do kind things or spontaneous, serendipitous experiences. Next thing you know, I get out at this farm, and the nicest old couple were there to greet me, and I went into the barn and I threw bales of hay up into this loft. I forget, out of a truck into a loft, and stacked them and everything for this farmer. Took a couple hours, and then, oh man, did I get the better end of this deal. I got to stay there for the night. They fed me a huge dinner. I went up to my guest room. There was a TV in an adjoining room, and the Phillies were on. My favorite baseball team I grew up with were on the dang television. So I watched a Phillies game, and the Phillies destroyed this team. So you never know what's going to happen. You get up in the morning, I had a great night, spent the night there. They fed me a huge breakfast, then made me a huge lunch to take with me, and all kinds of fresh vegetables from their garden and all kinds of things. And they took me back to the trailhead. And all my clothes were washed. She washed all my... it was incredible. So all of that for just a couple hours of work in this barn, which I enjoyed anyway. So another experience I had, remember in New Jersey, they have a reputation of ginormous raccoons. And I remember walking up on some forlorn-looking day hikers. They were sitting around a campfire in the middle of the afternoon or late morning or something, and they looked miserable. They looked depressed. So I walked up to them and was going to chat them up a little bit. And they told me the story of how they were terrorized all night by something out in the campsite, ravaging their campsite. And the dog was terrified. All of them were afraid to come out of their tents because it was loud. Whatever it was had to be big. And it was making all kinds of noise, and it just had its way with all their... everything they brought, all their food and everything. And when they got up in the morning, what they discovered was that this enormous raccoon had eaten like an entire box of cereal. It ate all the dog's food. I don't know. They gave me a list of all the things that that raccoon ate. It ate so much it could barely move. And they chased it, and the best it did was it ran to the edge of the clearing and climbed up a tree to get away from them. And it was at the top of this tree, just sitting up there, swaying in the breeze, looking down at us, looking down at all these people. So they had treed it, and it was sitting up there, and they just pointed up to him and said, "There he is." You know, ruined their camping trip. I thought that was so dang funny. I took a picture of that raccoon. Now, one time I was hiking past, I was in somewhere near New York, up North Jersey. I can't remember. There was another park, you know, with a lake, and that the trail went by. And I remember there's a bunch of people picnicking, so I went down there. Next thing you know, I mixed it up with all these Puerto Ricans that came out of New York City and were hanging out for the day, and they were cooking and they fed me all kinds of food, and then we played paddle ball, and they all wanted to play me. I beat them all one by one, and because I used to be pretty good at paddle ball, so they really enjoyed that. We had this like tournament, and they were all trying to knock me off the mountain. None of them could, and we had more fun playing tunes and eating and hanging out with a bunch of Puerto Ricans from New York City. I had more fun with those folks. So anyway, just great experiences like that. Harriman State Park was really gorgeous. I kind of slammed New York a little bit because I think that's New York, Harriman State Park. I can't remember if it's Connecticut or New York. Maybe you're already in Connecticut at that point, but I just remember Harriman State Park was gorgeous. And Bear Mountain. I spent the night on Bear Mountain on this overlook, just on top of the mountain. Look, you know, what a there's nothing like sleeping outdoors under the stars, folks. You know, sleeping in a tent is not, I don't know, there's a degree of separation between you and the outdoors. It's not a full nature experience for me until you're just completely laying on the ground or on the beach or in the woods and wherever, just totally out in nature. Birds flying over your head, just feeling all the breezes and smelling all the smells and waking, you know, peering out of your sleeping bag in the middle of the night at this array of stars over top of you. Sleeping under the stars is my favorite way to experience the outdoors. You take a chance doing that. Of course, the critters, the wildlife, but you also, I've had things run across my head and stuff like that. But you know, you also take a chance with the weather. So I've been caught a couple times in in rain at night when I had no shelter, and that's not a pleasant experience. And once involved lightning. Yeah, that was Dragon's Tooth. Dragon's Tooth was a ridge somewhere in Virginia, I think, and it was just this sheer drop off on either side of the trail. Just followed this jagged ridge for quite a ways. And I was trying to get to some lean-to, and it just seemed like it was taking forever. And finally, I was by myself. I just gave up. You know, I said, I'm going to sleep right on top of this dang ridge. So I made my bed and cooked my dinner, sitting right there. You can look down one side and look over to the other side, into the valley on either side. I'm up on top of this ridge, and it was pretty neat. Until some point in the night, I woke up to pit pat, pit it, pat pat, pat at, pit pit, pat at, pit, and I was being rained on. So I opened my eyes and looked around, and then I saw flashes of lightning. So yeah, I mean, I'm in significant danger at that point. So I put everything metal in my pack, put my pack cover on my pack, leaned it against a rock or a tree, and I got as far away from it as I could and found a cave, somewhat of a cave, and crawled up in there and just waited it out until it got light enough. I went back to my pack and this thing blew over and walked on. And the shelter I was going to get to wasn't even that far up the trail. That's the funny thing. But I just wanted to sleep. I liked all these experiences, and I like to sleep on top of mountains and things where there's beautiful views. Let's see. Harriman State Park was one of those experiences. It was just so beautiful, you know. Sleeping, just laying your drop cloth out and sleeping with this beautiful valley below you, and waking up in the morning. And I would have my stove primed the night before. So I would fill the little priming cup up with fuel, have my lighter right next to it, have my tea bags already ready, like in the water. And the water already in my pot. So all I needed to do, I didn't even have to sit up in my sleeping bag, was reach over, grab my lighter, light the priming cup, and then crack the valve open when it primed, and to vaporize the fuel. Okay, and start my stove and make my tea, and add some powdered sugar and powdered milk and sugar, and sit up and have my tea in my sleeping bag, looking out at this beautiful valley with this blanket of cloud. And yeah, that's a great experience of the outdoors. Birds flying right over your head. Now, Bear Mountain was the only place I ever saw a bear. People have always asked, "Did you see a bear? Did you see a bear?" I saw a bear in Minnesota when I was on Outward Bound. That's a whole nother video I'll have to make sometime about how I almost got mauled by a bear. But and a buddy of mine got mauled by a bear, and I was not mauled by a bear because I beat him in rock, paper, scissors. And he ended up getting mauled by a bear. It's a long story, folks, but it's true. And I'll relate that to you maybe some other time in a video. But the Appalachian Trail, I never saw a bear except one time. I saw a bear on the Appalachian Trail because, believe it or not, the Appalachian Trail at that time anyway went right through a zoo. Bear Mountain Zoo. So literally you follow the blazes and it leads you right through the middle of a dang zoo. So of course in that zoo I saw some bears. Everybody else seemed like they saw bears. I was the only one. I saw a moose once. All I saw was a big moose rear end, and running, crashing through the bushes in New Hampshire in front of me. That was the only time I saw a moose. I've seen mooses out in Wyoming. Now, let's see what else is interesting. I remember when I was going through that Bear Mountain Zoo, there was a little lady, a little Jewish lady. Cutest dang thing. And I'll never forget her. I don't know why she said this to me. Maybe she saw my backpack, because I had a bumper sticker on my backpack that said "Equal Rights for Unborn Women," and with a picture of an unborn child, and I had an American flag that I had duct taped and dental floss sewed into my backpack, and with duct tape and dental floss. So anyway, this little lady, I guess she figured I was a Christian. I don't really know, but she grabbed my arm and she said, "I'm Jewish, but I love Jesus." And her eyes were like all starry. And why she said that to me, I'll never know. But that was just such an interesting encounter. I just got somebody to take a picture of her and I together so I would remember her. So the little Jewish lady who loved Jesus at Bear Mountain Zoo came to mind, and also an experience I had. I went to Graymore Monastery. The AT goes near this monastery, and I stayed there a couple nights. Actually, they let me stay a second night, and Father Jack, something or other, was the priest. He was the rector or prior or whatever they call it, head guy, and he was really nice to me. He gave me a book, I remember. He gave me Abandonment to Divine Providence by Jean-Pierre de Caussade. That's a 16th century, 17th century Jesuit priest, French Jesuit priest. It's a spiritual classic. It's only about 120 pages, but he gave me that to read on the trail, which I'm forever grateful, because next to the Bible, it's my favorite spiritual book of all time. This French Jesuit priest who died in obscurity. Abandonment to Divine Providence. Incredible spiritual book. I've given it to so many people. and hands down my favorite spiritual book next to the Bible. Now, Father, this priest was really good. He's a good guy. And so I remember I hitchhiked to a train station, and then I caught a train into New York City. I pop up out of Grand Central Station, and once again, having been in the woods for a while, and it was a pretty neat experience. I had called my sister, and she was in New York City at the time working. So I found my way to her office building in Manhattan, and we went out to lunch. I got to hang out with my sister. And can't remember, did I spend the night at her house? I really can't recall, but I think I might have. But anyway, made it back to Greymoor Monastery, got back on the trail. Just a little nice, fun little side adventure. Now, a memory I have walking through Connecticut was kind of cool. I was reading this book. I was reading a lot of books. I read the Bible on the trail. I read Indian books. I read a lot of Indian books for some reason. My sister was pumping these books to me, and I was cranking them out. And this one book she sent me was about this guy named Eagle, and he was a Indian who was injured, and he was being taken care of by this mysterious old man that he didn't know was a demigod. Okay, kind of like this Indian deity who had rescued this young brave who was swept over a cliff in a buffalo hunt. His name was Eagle. So he lives in a cave, and the whole book pretty much takes place in this cave. And it's Eagle trying to relate to this eccentric, strange old man that he doesn't realize is a deity. Okay, the old man of the shadows, and the trickster. He's kind of a deity that you find common amongst a lot of North American Indian tribes, have some version or other of this particular deity. And so that's what factors into the story. This guy's a changeling. This deity, this old man, is a changeling. He can change himself into anything. And at a certain point, this enemy tribe war party discovers them in their cave, and they're making their way up there to kill Eagle, and who had broken his leg in the fall. So this Indian took care of him. And the deity, the old man, changes himself into an eagle, and he flies over the tribe that Eagle's from, and swoops over the head of his brother Owl, who's the medicine man, and who sees this as an omen, and he forms a war party, and they follow this eagle, which guides them back to the cave, and they rescue their brother. They find and rescue his brother Eagle. Okay, and that's the end of the book. All right, so there's a point to this, folks. I'm reading this book, and I'm really into it, okay? And I'm walking through Connecticut, and I look off to the side of the trail, and there's a dang cave entrance. What looked like one. So I took my pack off. I walked over there and started investigating it. And sure enough, it was a cave, and it looked dry in there, and I see that you could sleep in there. There was a flat place where you could sleep. So I didn't see any evidence of any animals or anything, any tracks or whatever, refuse. So I thought, well, this looks pretty safe, and just for the heck of it, I'm going to sleep in this cave. So I went around, gathered firewood, and I made a little fire at the entrance to the tent. And I'm having a ball. I got my flashlight out, and I'm reading my Indian book about Eagle in the cave, and in my cave with my little fire. And I was like, this is so sweet. Woke up in the middle of the night, and I felt something squishy underneath me, and grabbed my flashlight and looked, and there was a rivulet of water going right underneath my drop cloth. I actually had 2 drop cloths down for some reason. And thank goodness I did, because this little rivulet channel of water was going right under my drop cloth because a storm had rolled in the middle of the night, and it was a pretty significant storm to generate this runoff. But I was like, I looked, investigated it, and it was going neatly right underneath my drop cloth. So what the heck? I just went back to bed and slept on a waterbed that night. Never got wet. So the next day, I go to this overlook that I want to show you the picture. And I'm in Connecticut. Was I in Connecticut or was this all in Massachusetts? Honestly, I think I'm wrong. I think this was in Massachusetts, the more I think about it. Anyway, as I'm on this overlook the next day after this experience, an eagle circling around over me as I'm eating my lunch. A bald eagle circles me, circles, and then finally disappears in the clouds over my head. I just thought that was neat. That I had just been reading this book, and that happened. So anyway, now what else is interesting here? How am I doing on time? Yeah, I'll tell you this one story about this family, and then I'll take a break, and there'll be a third video because I'm getting 20 minutes or more here. So this is a great little story. You know, one day I was going to do a 30-mile hike. I was in Massachusetts, and I wanted to crank out 30 miles because, again, I was kind of rushing to get the trail done by September 29th. There was still hope for me that I was going to be able to get done and get back to my brother's wedding and have the trail complete so I could go home for the wedding and be done. It didn't work out that way. But anyway, I was still hopeful, so I was trying to put in some big days and lots of miles. This one particular day, I was going to do a 30-miler, and I knew that if I get from this shelter, get up really early, I got up super early. And next thing I know, I come out of the woods. I'm hauling. I left everybody behind that was still there. I got up very quietly and made my breakfast and got out while it was just barely light. And I was going to do this big 30-mile day, and I'm feeling great, you know. Walking down this country road, past farmhouses for a short spell before the trail was going to cut off to the right across a field and up a ridge. So I'm barreling down this country road in a great mood, and you know, roosters doing their thing, and next thing you know, I walked right past the trailhead, and I continued walking down this road. I missed the turnoff. Okay, so I walked a half a mile without seeing a blaze, and realized I missed the trailhead. I come to an intersection in this town. And I'm like, I can't believe I did this. Talk about harpooning myself, you know. I mean, it's a long way to try to get 30 miles, and I just totally ruined it by taking this detour into this town. I missed the trailhead. I was so angered. I was really irritated by that. And so as I'm standing there, I thought to myself, well, maybe there's a providential reason why I came into this town. Maybe it's God's will mysteriously. Maybe there's a reason for this. So I stood there thinking about it, and I looked over and saw a phone, a payphone. I guess there aren't any payphones anymore, but there's a payphone. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to call my mom. What the heck? So I go over and call my mom, talk to her for a while, then I talk to my sister for a while. Then I'm like, I still feel like there's something I'm supposed to do here. You know, maybe my business isn't complete. Talk about abandonment to divine providence and following the promptings of the Holy Spirit. I just thought, well, it's Sunday. You know what? Maybe I can try to go to Mass. Still pretty early. I look across the street and I see some people coming out of some hostel, bed and breakfast type of place. So I walked over to them. And I said, how you doing? Do you know if there's any Catholic churches around? They said, yeah, there's one in Lee, Massachusetts, up the road. We're headed there now. If you want, you can grab a ride with us. So I jump in with these people, and they drop me off at the front door of a church in Lee, Massachusetts. I think it was Sacred Heart. And so 1 minute I'm on the Appalachian Trail. Next thing you know, I'm walking into a Catholic church in some neighboring town. It was just fun, spontaneity, you know. So I walk in. Of course, I just came out of the woods. I don't smell too good. I don't look too good. I left my backpack in the foyer of this church, and I clambered up there in my boots and pack, and sat close to the front. No one sat anywhere near me. And at the end of Mass, this lady who was the lector comes over to me. And this little short lady, and she was super duper nice. And she said, "Would you like to come back to my house for breakfast?" I'm like, "Yeah, let me get my pack." So I got my pack and I got in with this lady, and she took me back to her house with her husband and her daughter, and she proceeded to cook me this breakfast. She made me like hash browns and eggs and bacon, and as she saw that I tore through that like there's no tomorrow, and toast and the rest of it, she saw that I manhandled whatever she put in front of me. So then she's like, "Well, I can make pancakes," and I was like, "Yeah, sure. Hey, pancakes are great." She makes me a stack of pancakes. Oh my gosh. Then she makes me this humongous Dagswood, type sandwich, and gives me a whole bunch of fresh garden vegetables and stuff all this in my pack. And her husband takes me in his pickup truck and drops me off at the trailhead, which I found on that country road. So this little spontaneous adventure. And just to finish the story, now fast forward the tape many years, I'm a priest. And I went up to Stockton, Massachusetts for a retreat. I don't know when this was. I've been a priest for 17 plus years. This was like maybe 7, 8 years ago or something. I went up to Stockton, Massachusetts, which is right near Lee, Massachusetts. And I was there for a week making this retreat at the Shrine of Divine Mercy. Anyway, so I'm like, you know what, just for fun, I want to go over to Lee, Massachusetts one afternoon and see if I can find that lady. So I went over to the parish Sacred Heart. I went into the parish office, told them who I was and who I was looking for. All I had to do is start describing this woman, and they were like, "We know exactly who that is." And she died last summer. She said, but her daughter and her husband still live there. And if you want, I can put you on the line with her daughter. So I called her daughter and chatted with her for a little bit. Anyway, so unfortunately, she had died. But I went back to the monastery, and that night, the priest from that parish of Sacred Heart called the monastery and asked if any of the guys could take his place for the morning mass because he was really ill and had come down with some cold or something, and he was asking for a substitute. So the rector or prior of this monastery where we were staying, and we're just parish priests, from D.C., and he goes, "Well, I got some parish priests here, on retreat. Maybe they want to do it." So he said, "I'll ask them." So he came down to us, and when I heard, I was just there today. You talking about that church in Lee, Massachusetts, Sacred Heart? I just was there. And I'm like, "I'll do it. Yeah, I'll do it." And I'll tell the folks at the daily mass, the daily mass crowd, I'll tell them the story about that lady and what she did for me all those many years ago in 1990. She showed me all this hospitality and generosity when I was kind of a pariah at that church. I stunk and I looked, pretty nasty. Anyway, so the next morning I get up and look at the readings to see what I'm going to be preaching on. And son of a gun, if I'm not preaching on James. And I'm going to grab this real quick. So, James is the reading for the day. Tell me this isn't fortuitous, all right? This is what you call divine choreography, man. Talk about divine providence. Chapter 2 of the letter of James was the reading for the day. Listen to this. "My brothers and sisters, show no partiality. For if a man with gold rings and in fine clothing comes into your assembly, and a poor man in shabby clothing also comes in, and you pay attention to the one who wears the fine clothing and say, 'Have a seat here, please,' while you say to the poor man, 'Stand there,' or 'Sit at my feet,' have you not made distinctions among yourselves and become judges with evil thoughts?" Anyway, what are the odds that that would be the reading of the day? I swear that's what you call divine choreography. Another little adventure. So next time we'll pick up where we left off. God bless you.